First of all, thank you all for joining us this morning. I have a great water manager. I'm excited to introduce Tony Brucia. Did I say that right? I didn't say it right, did I?
You didn't say it right.
I practiced and I got it wrong.
Brucia.
Tony Brucia, out of Park City, Utah, who I've been working with for years, but clearly not said his last name enough times. And we are going to talk about what Tony wished he knew when he started managing the smart irrigation controller. So let me just jump right into I see that some of you are having issues connecting to the video. I know that our crack team of engineers is behind the scenes working on that. So I hope that we are getting you tuned in here. I'm going to start with our title slide. What I wish I had known when I started managing smart irrigation. This is the second in a series of episodes that is kind of designed around the theme of Smart Irrigation Month. You'll notice that Tony and I are both wearing blue to support the Smart Irrigation Month. And what we did last week was just kind of what are smart controllers. Now we want to jump into the conversation with Tony, who has been managing smart controllers of many descriptions for many, many years, and try and learn what he wished he had known when he started, right? So what advice he would give to a contractor just starting out and just transitioning from traditional irrigation controllers to smart irrigation timers. So when we were talking about this, Tony had a great take on the concept of getting started, just the mental hurdles of making the big switch. Tony, can you talk a little bit about what you see in the industry as an obstacle for getting started with smart controllers?
Well, I think it's we're a tight industry. Guys that pick irrigation, we pick irrigation for a reason. We don't want to be landscapers. We also like to work outdoors, and it's a little it's a technical job. And when you start getting higher up in it and you've been doing it for years, you get kind of set in your ways, I think. So I think what I see as a hurdle out there is I see some guys that are just kind of opposed to technology. They've been managing a park or they've been managing a facility for so many years, and all of a sudden comes this guy along with this smart irrigation system and telling you how you're going to save water, and your boss is all about it. He wants to do it because the city managers or whomever are going to finance the thing, or they're hearing it politically. So here you are,
water bill wants it, that's for sure.
Yeah, so here you are as a guy who's been doing your job for years, and all of a sudden says you've got to adapt. And some guys want it. Now I think there's two different sides of that. I think there's some guys that are out there that have been saying, give it to me. I've been waiting. I've been wasting a lot of my time. If you tell me your smart system can do X, Y, and Z, I'm sold. You see what I mean? And they could care less maybe about the other 40, 50 features it has, but there's specific things, and these guys are smart and they know what they're looking for. And then there's the other guys that are kind of more like the ox with the ring in their nose, and they got to kind of be dragged along to it. But the reality is technology is going to leave you in the dust if you do or don't get involved. I'm 50 years old. Okay, I did not grow up in the tech savvy days. My first smartphone, it kind of shocked me. My wife had to show me how to text, actually. So for me, I'm in that group where I see the technology. I love the technology. I understand it from the water manager's perspective. I understand it from all of the hurdles and all of the things that I've always wanted my irrigation systems to do, but then never had the tools to do it. So here along comes one other track, here along comes smart control, here along comes flow sensors for us. And I mean good flow sensors, not the crappy ones that we saw connected to other systems for years that maybe never work. I can tell you how many disconnected flow sensors I've seen more than connected.
Never connected, right?
But on that side, I've got a great staff. I've got some great guys. Some of my guys are obviously younger than me, so they're more tech savvy. I'm able to pass that. So for older managers, I would say rely on your younger guys. Rely on saying, hey, I understand this completely. Can you just help me make these program changes? Because like me, I wear glasses. Maybe I can't see my phone as well in the field. I prefer to program in front of my big 40-inch screen. I can see the numbers really good when I'm sitting at home. So I think it's more about embracing it, Ben. I think it is. I think it's about saying, I've got to get on board with this. My mom's got a cell phone, I mean, everybody's got a cell phone nowadays. Everybody texts, everybody Zoom meetings, so, learning curve.
Totally. And I think of it the same way. When I first started, I really could see the folks that were opposed to the technology, but also there's this entrenched idea of the guys who've been doing this for so many years that they have the solution, right? They have been managing successfully to no complaints. They've been the top guy in their company for 20, 40, 50 years, right? And there's no smart controller that's going to come out and show me how to do this. And it kind of gets to a headbutting sort of condition where guys are just resistant to see the technology come into play. Do you see that at all?
I do, but I think the thing is it's the proof in the data. A great example is when we got started. I think the first WeatherTrack systems I installed was in 2015 for a school district, and they had a prior system that was claimed to be a smart system. Regardless, it wasn't working for them. So they had made the investment to go to WeatherTrack at that time. It was brand new to me. I mean, it was brand new. It was the first time I'd opened the box and looked at one and dug into it deep, dug into the reporting. District wound up asking us, hey, we have some data from what we've been using historically. It's not great data, but we've got some data. Would love to run a test. So they hired us to stay on with the system for 2 years. And we audited every month. We would go through, pull runtime reports, pull flow usage reports. And it was amazing because that's what really sold me. And I think that if you look at it, if you can get to a customer, or you can say to somebody, I know you know how to manage the system. And I think you're putting down the right amount of water, but you really don't know until you actually get a flow sensor on there and you start seeing what's going on, because you'll look at some of your turf zones and start saying, well, wait a minute, I'm using 20% less water and this place is as green as a shamrock. I could probably cut it back, and you're going, okay, so you cut it back. And now all of a sudden you're using 30% less water, customer's still happy, product still looks great. And you're scratching your head going, I've been overwatering. And, to that end, like we're talking about drought right before we started this, and I'm in the middle of a heavy duty drought. We've been cranking our systems down for weeks. We've been just coming down. And our properties are still too darn green. We're now getting to the point where even though we're conserving and we're showing the conservation within the system, there's more to go. And it's shocking for me as a water manager, because I'm looking at it saying, have I been overwatering? Have I maybe not been aggressive enough in trying to find the bottom, trying to see how low can I go and still keep it?
100%. I was that guy, right? I was the put the pencil to paper and figure out every station's runtime and how to cycle and soak and how to eliminate runoff. And I thought I had figured it out based on my IA teachings. And this is back in like 2005. I was making weekly adjustments to those controllers. I got WeatherTrack on my site. I'm like, I'm afraid you're not going to save anything because I am on the scene right here. I'm doing this.
Well, we were talking about that, Ben, because because we're IA and with the Irrigation Association, if you're an auditor, we all know the spreadsheets. We know the sheets that we can use for actually calculating the optimal runtime for a zone on any given day. But I mean, who's got the time? Who's going to sit down and run this spreadsheet? Now, granted, you could do it on Excel. You could try to feed it in, but that's the brilliance. There you go. That's it right there. I mean, it's got your K factors. If you scroll down, it'll even give you valuations for compaction, high intensity turf, different categories. This is the heart of WeatherTrack. This is what I get at is WeatherTrack does this for me every single day across, I don't even know how many thousands of zones of irrigation we manage across all of our properties. So there's no humanly way possible that we could do what it does. Now, I could do it on a given day. The old technique, and this is fun because the old technique was you would use these and you would find out your ideal runtime for what was considered your hottest day of the year. So let's say my hottest day of the year was 80 degrees. I would calculate ET on that day, and then I would come up with my program, put that in, and then believe it or not, using global adjust, you were able to globally adjust up and down. And if, for example, you had a 60-minute runtime and you cut it in half, you know by your PR rate that you'd put down 50% less water. And if you wanted to calculate it on an inch basis, you could do it that way. Oh, I want to put down a calculated 1 inch of water and then use my global adjust to go up or down half inch, whatever I wanted from there. I mean, it works. And it worked for years.
For that day, right? It works for the one day that you've calculated, and then it kind of works.
It kind of works, but it's never really there. You know, going back to history of like our first properties and that when we were asked to do that, the alarming things that we saw too was, you know, come August out here in the Intermountain West, we cool off. People don't realize, you know, the summer solstice is in June, and your sunlight is waning every day from June on down. So your days are getting shorter. The Sun King can't do his work as hard as he wants to. So it starts cooling off and your nights start getting cooler and your water demand goes tremendously down. And I mean, in conventional controllers, we see the techs go out and, you know, respond to the brown spot in July and crank the controller up. And then no one ever goes back. No one ever goes back and turns that down. And here you are doing the blowout in October. And you're going, why is it at 130%? I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, here's the other side of that conversation, right? What we're looking at here is what the best of the best contractors are doing, right? What you're talking about is what the average contractor is doing. And sometimes the average landscape contract provides that somebody will come out in April and set up the controller and not be back until October to turn it off, right?
If the client's that cheap.
July schedules all the way through. The guy who's programming that has to set that schedule for July, and you're just pouring the water on in the spring and the fall. So it's not necessarily an indictment of any contractor or any practice, right? But it is the reality of what we see in the irrigation world. And the fact is, with smart controllers, we do better, right? With WeatherTrack, we are running that calculated depletion model. We're thinking of every station as a glass of water, and we're going to keep that glass of water somewhere between totally full or 0% deplete, and keep that glass of water at least half full or at most 50% deplete, right? So when we get to that 50%, that's our maximum allowable depletion, and that's what prompts irrigation and fills that glass of water back up. So we are tracking that depletion day by day, and that is the result of not only the weather, but the station programming, which is where it comes into play, right? This is where Tony and his team really get into the detail work. Can we talk a little bit about your history, your experience, any knowledge that you would give a early on contractor about managing the station settings?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to get really comfortable in the advanced programming and not use the standard programming. The standard programming is good and you will see efficiency with it, but the better the data and the better the information that you can put into the program, the more accurate it is going to get, the more tighter it's going to get. The other side of that, and I'll go on this a little further, is once you have your data in there, and if that data is good, and I'm talking about like precipitation rates, have you gone out on that rotor zone and said, if it's a bank of falcons, are they all number 16 nozzles? Do I have matched precipitation between my corners, my halves, my fulls, if I'm on a mixed zone, those type of things. And if they're not corrected, correct those things, obviously. Yeah. But if you have that information, that's going to get you really tight. And then your efficiency is even tighter, because a good example, I have a one sprinkler zone at a school where there's got to be 70 heads on the thing, okay? And it's a spray zone, and it has heads like every 10 feet. So, I mean, it is overkill. So when we look at that, you know, I've got it up there at like 95, 98% efficiency, as compared to some other zones that were remodeled by some maybe not the greatest contractors. And what should have been 40-foot spacing on Falcons is really closer to 50. And even with big nozzles, we're really not getting the head-to-head we want. So, you know, we adjust the efficiency down. So a lot of us are used to using percentage adjust, and percentage adjust is great, but we have to think of that in more of a global term of what that does. But back to what Ben was showing with the IA spreadsheet, that spreadsheet is exactly what WeatherTrack is doing every day. So if we do know that precipitation rate and we do know that efficiency, the way this formula calculates is far more accurate than doing just a percentage adjust. Knowing your root depths, knowing all of that, it's hugely important. And once you've got that, then like where I am, I mean, I'm in the middle of a horrible drought, one of the worst we've seen in, they're saying 100 years out here. We're able to have more tools at our disposal to be able to mitigate. So we're one of the things, and I was mentioning this to Ben prior to the show, one of the interesting phenomenons that we're seeing, and a lot of people are maybe seeing, is on our schools because of COVID, we're seeing outdoor classroom use. So we saw abuse of turf in areas on properties that we never saw it before. I mean, never saw it. So we now have to treat these areas as if they're like a sports field. So being able to come in and make these adjustments virtually and not actually having to go out to a controller, it's awesome. And then to be able to see the results, because we can right now, as we're in the summer, we're trying to rehab those areas. These kids beat these areas so bad, I mean, from daily trampling, that we're trying to be in rehab mode, but I'm in a drought. So I'm trying to mitigate this, back and forth. So on the flip side, we're looking at areas and saying, well, if it's non-usage turf, it's in a courtyard, nobody uses it, man, we're going to the bottom on that kind of stuff with it. And then, Ben, like mad limit switch. I mean, that's a fun little, it's a topic. I mean, WeatherTrack has it. And if you don't understand what it means, I'll just give it to you real fast. What it basically says is, so if I restrict an irrigation system, let's say 2 or 3 days worth a week of water, during those days that I'm off, I'm going to accrue a high amount of depletion. So when my controller does come on, it's going to try to make that up. So like Ben said about that cup, now that cup is more than 50% not full. We're down to the 70% range. If I let the irrigation system go, it's going to water like mad trying to bring that water back. In essence,
back to zero, right?
It
water
is. It's
all of the depletion that it's
exactly. And the grass is going to respond, and the grass is going to go, thank you so much for filling my cup. I'm going to grow like mad. And then you're going to get a call from your water department going, what did we talk about saving water? We're trying to cut down. So they're looking for brown spots. They're looking for yellowish turf. So by setting the mad limit switch, what that means is when that controller comes on, it will only water back to the 50% depletion mark. So it's going to ignore any of that depletion that's higher than 50% and give you just a standard watering cycle based on all that data that we put in. So if the ideal runtime for that rotor zone was 40 minutes, that's all it's going to get. WeatherTrack's not going to allow itself to try to make up that. So you can use WeatherTrack in drought situations like we are to be able to set restrictions, to be able to, hold yourself back, hold your system back. Conventionally, you would have gone out and just programmed time. Now you can do that too. If it really gets to it and you've got a sticky manager and they're like, I just want you on time based, you could just go to user no ET and just set user no ET on your zones and say, I'm going to run all spray zones for 10 minutes. I'm going to run all rotor zones for no more than 30 minutes. And that's it. And that's all I get. And then at that point, because you're on user no ET, you're ignoring the ET side of it. Restrictions come off, you can go back. So it's a lot of flexibility. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of flexibility, and the flexibility is, literally right here at my keyboard.
There you go.
So, it's easy.
Yeah. Well, when back to the station programming, when we drill into that, there's a lot of different ways, like that mad limit switch that you're talking about. That's a great one. An experienced user will definitely keep their eye on the efficiency and getting precip rates and efficiencies dialed in. In fact, one of the we'll say a very high visibility site in Salt Lake City has a team that goes around and audits every irrigation system. Once every 3 years, they get to see the precip rate and efficiency on every zone. Where WeatherTrack gives you defaults based on industry standards, the more accurate that information, the better the system is going to perform. Right.
And Ben, again, you could pull, the guys can just pull it up on the IA website if they're not already familiar with it. You can do it by a simple walk in the field and looking at your nozzles, and you can do it off of your nozzles. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
So, and then even with spray zones, you can just refer to a Rainbird or a Hunter catalog, and it's going to tell you what the PR rate is on a 15 half versus a 15 full. And, and you can come up with that. If you've got mixed zones, you'll have to make an educated decision as to what you think is the in between there. But yeah, the resources for that are all available.
And the one thing I wanted to highlight is once you get that stuff in place, right, the system is good enough to show you where the problems exist. I always warn users up front, once this system is dialed in, it does require less management of the irrigation schedule, but not less management of the irrigation system, because what we used to do is water so much that it compensated for every little thing, right? You could get a rock in a spray head nozzle and not see it in the life of the turf because we were overwatering enough to compensate for that. And now with WeatherTrack, we are delivering exactly the right amount of water, to the point where literally I can go out and see a rock in a nozzle because there's a V shape in the middle of the spray pattern, which means that we are just walking that fine line between exactly what that water or that turf needs and maybe a little bit less, right? That means you're right on the edge of where you want to be.
Yeah, I think also comes with that is flow, you know, and I preach it so much. I mean, flow is like my biggest thing. We recommend to every one of our customers, unless you've got flow, you just don't know. I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but it's true. It's like having it's like taking the blinders off and being able to actually see what's happening, because one, it opens up a whole suite of alerts that you're able to get, from your high flows to your low flows to your mainline breaks, all kinds of stuff. So I mean, and those are hugely important. But I think the biggest thing, you know, if we're talking water management, is being able to actually come back and audit, and being able to come back and see effectively, what did I do? You know what I mean? If I make these changes, because I'm going to have to report now, right? I'm in the middle of it. So I'm just making effective changes on my controllers in a week. I'm going to be asked to produce a water report, and I've got to show a substantial decrease in water consumption. So we can see that, you know, we can see how much we've actually saved. We can see on a per zone basis, we can see it all, you know, we can see it globally. So without a flow sensor, I just don't know. I don't know how to run a commercial irrigation system without one, I guess is how I'd put it. And then from a manager's perspective, because I do have some clients that have asked us to manage their irrigation, and I say, well, what do you want me to do? You know, I mean, if I don't have a flow sensor and I can't see you on my computer, what is my role as your water manager? Come out and just look at your clocks, inspect the turf, and go, that looks too green. You know, I mean, it becomes more rudimentary. So once you have flow, it opens it up to where, yeah, a water manager can effectively do his job.
So talk to me about if you were a first-time smart controller manager, managing the alerts from a high level, right? We jumped right into the deep end with flow monitoring, which I definitely wanted to explore more on, but it's not the only alert that you're going to need to manage. What kind of learning curve is there? What are the bumpiest parts of the road in learning to manage alerts?
I think the biggest thing is realizing the alerts are real and that they're happening for a reason. So I've had some HOA managers where we've done WeatherTrack systems for them, and they're kind of more that, you know, ring and nose ox kind of fellas, and they struggle because they don't want to go out and spend the time. They don't want to get out of the truck, so they're getting high flow alerts, and it's on a drip zone. And of course, the drip's all under mulch, and no one's getting out of the truck and actually walking over there and finding where your ankle sinks a foot deep into the wet soil because there's a broken, you know, piece of netafim or whatever. So you've got to be proactive. You've got to realize that those alerts, and that you set those up for a reason to give you that information and tell you when there was a problem, and you can't just ignore them. But there's other.
That is a part of my protocol, right? Like when I am talking to a contractor, he calls me mad. I keep getting these station high flow alerts. My first question is always, have you gone out and looked at the system? Is something broken? And honestly, like a ridiculous percentage of the time, the answer is, oh no, I didn't think to do that.
Well, and sometimes, Ben, they can be really hidden. I mean, I've had them where I've gone out on a sports field where we're running, you know, big turf rotors, and you get a broken swing joint underneath the 1-inch head. It's got the slightest little mushroom coming up of water, but from a distance, I'd never seen it. I did no physical signs above ground that there was something broken, but until I walked around and all of a sudden it's all squishy around one of the heads, I'm like, oh, there, obviously that's my problem. And the system, and depending upon the flow sensor that you purchase, I mean, flow sensors today are they accurate? I mean, we can get down to like gallons. I mean, really high resolution. So, I mean, you can see it. you can see a broken line on a Netafim drip zone.
Flow HD plastic.
Exactly. So I mean, and it's kind of amazing what's out there in availability. And then, I think one of the jokes is a funny one is you have a runtime valve test that runs incorporated with WeatherCheck. So it checks all your valves every single time before it runs. Well, that happens 365 days a year. So, I remember one where a guy where we saw an alert for valve no connects. It was like middle of January. And you call the parks manager up and say, who's digging in your park? And sure enough, they go over there. It's a fiber optic crew boring a line through the middle of their park and cut through their wires. It's January. No one's going to tell you until you find out in April, half my park doesn't work. And you're trying to figure out, why does half my park not work? And no one ever thinks it was the boring crew that was 3 months ago that did it to you. So, the savings of things like that and like those kind of alerts are invaluable.
Absolutely. And to be able to capture, there is no way to quantify the troubleshooting experience that you'll pay for when there are fresh tracks, right? If you go out there the day that they cut through those wires, you know exactly where they are. Likely that hole is still open. If you wait until spring, you're getting your tracers out, you're getting the toners out, it is an monumental troubleshooting experience.
Well,
right?
And like on flow monitoring, I have one property where I can tell you the exact day because the maintenance crew does the edging with the hard stick metal edger thing, along the concrete, right? I can tell you the exact day per month that it is in their contract when they do that, because they whack probably 4 or 5 spray heads right along the edge. Next day, I get a bunch of flow alerts. The property manager calls me and I'm like, they edged. And he's like, they edged. I'm like, they edged.
Okay, we are running thin on time, but I did want to do one more thing. You had a great conversation that was all about dialing in the flow settings that I wanted to share with the group. When we talk about learning how to manage and learning how to use a smart controller, learning how to manage flow alerts is absolutely one of the biggest parts of it in my eyes. And you had a great tip that I thought that people would be wise to share.
Yeah, so sometimes, and this goes back to that spray zone I was talking about that has like the 70 heads at one of my school. It has so many heads on it, and it's spray heads, that if you were to pop a head, that they hit it with the edger or a nozzle comes off or whatever happens, one failed head out of 70 with 1804s doesn't produce typically a high enough flow rate to throw off your threshold, right? So you don't want to make
we have this 20%, right? Because the 20% is the standard that we use. And
so you can come back in, Ben, like we were talking about, you can come back in and you can make adjustments to that specific zone. And we can say, hey, I'm going to change the user defined. I'm going to change it to a user defined gallons per minute. And I'm going to tighten that up a little bit. And what that's going to do is you're going to give you a little tighter resolution so that you can see those things. So it's not something that you do all the time, but if you've got a zone where you're not seeing it and your property manager is calling you saying, hey, there's another broken head. I thought your wonderful system took care of this. And you're going, okay, yeah, it's supposed to take care of that, but why didn't it? And you go out and you run the zone before making the repair and realize, wow, my flow rate, even with the break, is within my acceptable limit. So I need to change my limits. And you just come in like Ben is showing you here, and you just come in and make manual adjustment to that. And you be careful. You go back and you watch it. The other trick that we've done with that is we'll mimic a break. We'll just unscrew the top off of a head and play with it until we can get it to trip out where we want, and then try to run it from there. So you can mimic a break as well.
And the other thing to know is that sometimes there is a significant pressure difference between daytime and nighttime irrigation. So if we learn flow during the day and then run irrigation at night, sometimes there's a big difference in the city pressure and therefore the delivery pressure.
Yeah, we have actually multiple properties with that. And it's funny because conventional wisdom usually says, well, everybody's asleep at night, nobody's using water, so there's got to be more water available at night. Yeah, unless you live next to a golf course or some other kind or whatever, a school or something, because 4 schools come on, 4 county parks come on, man, there's a lot of water. There's more water going down the pipe at night than there is going anywhere else. So yeah, your flow rates can be quite a bit. You'll see low flow alerts and stuff. So we'll go in and make adjustments on our low flows, and we'll usually set them to like no action, because we realize that if we're seeing that low flow, it's probably maybe a slow closing valve. It could be a whole lot of different hydraulic issues that are just going on in the middle of the night that I don't necessarily need to be woken up over.
So I'll tell you what I do. I can depend reliably on the information that the alert notification provides, right? The alert notification will say, I expected this value, I got this value. Whether it's low flow or high flow, it'll tell you what it expected as the limit and what it measured. And oftentimes, if I get a high flow alert that's 1 gallon per minute over, right? I can attribute that to the difference in pressure. So first I go out and check and make sure nothing's broken. But after I verify that the system is still intact, I will take the flow information from that alert notification and plug it in as the user-defined expected value, right? It will say, I expected 20 gallons a minute, I got 21. That means that the limit was 20. So I come in here and set the expected value at what we measured at that time, 21, and then I'll get the 20% on either side of that. And most times that makes that type of alert go away very quickly.
It does, yeah. And it may take 1 or 2 times to play with the adjustment, but usually it solves the problem.
All right, so we are I'm looking as Tim has a question. Where can I go to learn more about the inputs for this wonderful system? Oh, I will share that with you on our close. Tim, I'm moving in on that, and we'll talk about that on the support slide. But before I do that, we are running close to timeout. In fact, we are on timeout, but all my first time guests get asked the same question, and you are not going to escape. Tony, what does WeatherTrack save you?
Time, a lot of time, Ben. And we've talked about this before, but you know, back before, I mean, and this is not even just so much a WeatherTrack thing as it is, you know, we're talking about smart controllers. This is where smart controllers, web-based controllers that we have mobile access to are huge. It used to be where I would have to drive to I'd get a phone call on a Friday night that a sports complex manager didn't remember to tell me there was a soccer game that night. And there I am leaving my wife and family at dinner, going to go turn off water so I don't let down the kids. The ability to be able to do that from my phone and set a user event pause is valuable. And I can charge for it. It's not like I'm going to charge a full service call, but I keep track of that stuff. And you tag it on your customer's bill at the end of the month, and they're happy. They're happy that you didn't have it happen. Even better than that, Ben, is he forgets to call me completely, and the people start calling him at 6:15 when it's kickoff and the sprinklers are on. And the ability for to have a frantic guy on the end of the phone going me, you got to turn the sprinklers off, and me to go, hold on, press the button. I was like, is it off? And he's like, it just turned off. And it's like, yeah, they call you, I've been called the water god many times, and I am not the water god. All I have is WeatherTrack. It's that simple. You know, so it's a time saver. It's a huge thing. It's a stress reliever. You know what I mean? It's that. So the simplicity of that, I think, on top of all the other features, that one's got to be changed my life.
Yeah, real-time access to the on-off switch is a very important.
Yeah, we have some concert facilities and stuff that they do movies and concerts on the lawn and stuff, and the event girls can just, they can just send over their schedules and say, hey, and they can send over the most cockamamie schedules you've ever seen, like, hey, the caterers will be off by 10 o'clock, so we can water at 10, so we don't miss windows, Ben. We're able to still get watered down on a given night and not have to shut completely down. Years ago, when we would have an event, we'd just go turn the clock off. You know what I mean? Because we didn't want to take the time, and we were lazy and didn't want to change the run times or change the start time. It was easier just to go off. I'll come back tomorrow and turn it on. Now I can set a pause and I can say, no, at 10 o'clock, I'm free to water again, because by the way, I've got another event coming in 2 days that I got to shut down for.
I gotta water.
Yeah. So
restrictions, right? If you've got to turn off in the middle of one of your 2 days, you need every minute of that.
Exactly. So if I'm on restricted days, I've got to use that time, So now the simplicity of what it does for your life, as far as adding so much to you, I think is huge. I really do.
That's awesome. A great answer. Time is by far the most common thing I hear for that question.
More time to make more money, right?
There you go. Make money. All right. So real quickly, we close out always talking about some of our support resources. I have the distinct advantage of having real time. Oh, I meant to not stop sharing that. Sorry. Stop sharing the wrong thing. I have the honor of introducing a labor of love for our marketing team. You might have noticed if you logged in this morning that we have updated our website. And one of the great things about updating the website was we went through and were able to highlight all of the different lines that HydroPoint sells, including the WeatherTrack stuff. The website is also a great place to come for support resources. Okay, so if you are looking for documentation on how this all works and just like Tim asked, how do I really get into the definitions and support materials? That all lives here on the resources tab at hydropoint.com. You can go in here and check out training, which is what I do. But there's also a library of support documentation. There's a great one I wrote that is called the User's Guide to Filling Out the WeatherTrack Program Site Profile Worksheet, which goes through each of the questions and talks about what each individual sprinkler setting means and what each individual plant setting means. So if you're a beginner, that's a great place to start. Just come to hydropoint.com and go through some of the support documentation. We'll have all of the resources there that you might need to at least get started. And definitely, if you need more, we are here to help. So that is where we go back to our support team, 6-day-a-week bilingual customer support. Any questions you have, you can always call our support team. They'll point you in the right direction, as well as online training resources and support resources available for real-time engagement, right? Which brings us to next week. I'm totally excited. This is the second time I've gotten to say this. I had to push it due to my Smart Irrigation Month features, but we are set to have our second feature release party next week. I'm having my friend Bob Beers and my other friend Lance Elliott, who are in charge of our hardware and WeatherTrack mobile respectively, going to come on next week to talk about the release of the WeatherTrack 200 station 2-wire and the release of WeatherTrack Mobile 3.5, where, Anthony, I hate to give away some punchline, but you'll have access to precip rates and efficiencies from the mobile app.
Oh, that'd be great.
Is going to be a bit, that's not the only thing, but it is going to be worth tuning in to see what those guys are working hard at. So thank you so much for tuning in. And Tony, thank you for making time, and it's such a valuable contribution. What a great introduction. What a great voice of experience you've lended to this topic. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it, Ben. And it's part of what we do at the IA. I'd encourage your folks that are listening, get involved, join the Irrigation Association, get certified, and be an irrigation professional. We're in a heck of an industry, and part of that is doing stuff like this with you today and keeping people educated.
Outstanding. Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.
Okay.